Will Carlos's appendix have the same power as Alex Albon's? Did Ferrari sign the wrong Brit? Welcome to Tinfoil Helmets, your occasional spicy hot take roundup of the latest F1 rumors, with the almost believable conspiracy theories to back them up. Everything here is carefully researched for hours, making sure it's totally founded in logic, reasoning, and truth. Or not. Who knows? So, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, another race in the Middle East under the lights at a decent hour for those of us on the West Coast. Did we get anything right?
Yes, but no, but yes. So, I think I suggested that Perez was going to be on pole, Max was going to be on second, and Charles was in third. I was close, but not quite. I think it was Max on pole, was it Charles in second, and then Perez in third, correct?
Yeah, I think that was right, yeah.
Okay, so that's pretty good. I'm going to give myself a half point for that, because the right people, wrong order. Should we talk about the race? What did we get right about the race? Well, we said, this was a shocking prediction. I think we were very spicy. I think we said, nobody's going to believe this, Max was going to win. And did it happen?
Yes.
Yes. What a shock we were. We are future tellers.
In other news, water is wet.
Holy crap. My mind is blown.
Checo in second, even carrying a 5-second penalty.
I forgot about his penalty.
He had a 5-second, yeah. And Charles in third. We got that right.
Yeah, not bad.
Other prediction, Logan puts it into the wall. He did in free practice 3, and I did note at the end of last podcast that it was not dependent on the race session. However, I will say that Lance Stroll is also a great candidate for puts it into the wall.
Yes.
And he did. And then only one Macca makes it to Q3. No, both McLarens made it to Q3. That car looks like it has some... It's good. It's so close, I think, to actually being able to challenge the Ferrari and maybe even the Red Bulls up there.
It has potential.
It really does. Which is nice to see.
Which the Mercedes doesn't. None of the other cars have potential.
No, they were weirdly, not there this weekend.
No. It looks like we are hitting 5 out of 8 of our predictions. Was that for this race?
Right. That's through this race, because we have 2 half points carrying forward. So so now we're at even half points.
We're pretty good. Maybe we'll win the predictions championship.
Maybe we need to be bolder.
We do need to be bolder.
I mean, are people listening us because we could go 10 of 10 if we just go oh yeah, Max wins. Oh yeah, a pit stop happens. No. We could really bank on our.
We need to spice it up, given that we are a spicy hot takes podcast.
Like how many seconds of penalties will Kevin Magnussen have? That's a great take now.
Exactly.
Anyway, should we move on?
We should move on.
Did anything happen between the races?
In the strangest way, lots of things were supposed to happen, but nothing really happened. I mean, one thing happened, which we'll talk about in a moment, right? And that was impactful, and that was proper. But everything else was just conjecture and hypothesis and spicy takes that were just making crap up. But we should still talk about them, because some of them are based in evidence and reality. One of those, the first one, Jos Verstappen was seen talking to Toto, and then Jos said it was talking about would Max go to Mercedes. I will say this, if Toto decides to do this and then uses superlatives to wipe away Abu Dhabi 2021, Toto is dead to me, right? I don't mind Max driving for Muck, but you can't be like, well, at the end of the day it was okay, because then we've got a 4-time world champion. It's great. The conjecture at the beginning of the week was related to all of the spice, was that Jos was the one that was leaking the pictures. But then we had breaking news that a geriatric former race driver knows how to use Google Drive and was able to share pictures with people, supposedly.
Now, do you think this is a geriatric former race driver, or do you think this is a geriatric former race driver's assistant who, when you're trying to do conspiracy and leaching stuff, you got to keep that tight. You can't, involve other people, or it's going to come out.
I think that if we're to believe that it was Marco, it was him. Marco does not strike me as the type of person who has an assistant do his dirty work for him.
Marco also doesn't strike me as the type of person that knows how to use Google Drive.
I know, which is why there's a paradox, which means it's probably all a pile of crap. But this supposed leak leads to the most amazing possible timeline, right? So first of all, because of this, apparently, before we started the race, or before we got to the start of the race today, Marco was about to be suspended. And when they asked Max about Marco being suspended, Max said, if Marco goes, I go. Right? Which, when we tie that back to the previous statement about Toto and Joss talking about who gets to drive for who, when, and where, we then have Toto coming out saying that Marco can be the new Niki Lauda. This tees up the greatest train wreck of possible seat moves since, 1973.
What happened in 1973?
1973 is always a great benchmark because it's too far back for anybody to remember, but something must have happened. Plus, in the past, remember F1, nobody drove the same race twice. It was just put drivers in a big bag and shake them up, and maybe they'll come out in a different order. So this leads to Helmut leaving Red Bull, which means Max leaves Red Bull, which means that Max is out in the middle of the season, which leads to the fact that Mercedes, to lock Max down, need to get him driving in the season. That's the only way they'll convince him, you can drive tomorrow. Which means that Mercedes needs to fire Lewis.
Just as a real quick aside, that would lead to an interesting scenario of, could Max hold on to the championship in the Mercedes?
Yes, which I would like to discuss that at the very end of the Magic Seat Moves of Doom, because I think that is a really interesting opportunity. Both to...
I'm already not on board, but let's keep going.
Yeah, we'll see how that redeems various drivers in various different ways. But Max has to go to Mercedes. Mercedes need to give a seat, but they've only got one driver who's loose in the socket, which is Lewis, who's already resigned, so they have to fire Lewis in the middle of the season, which means the fact that Carlos has been out of the car for a week, which means that they're going to fire Carlos in the middle of the season so that Lewis can be in the Ferrari and get up to speed right now, because you can't have Lewis sitting idle. That'll just drive everybody crazy. Which leaves the fact that...
Especially the Lewis Hamilton subreddit. They would not like that.
Exactly. But this leaves an interesting question, because now you've got an empty seat at Red Bull, because it's not like Perez is going to go anywhere. He's just going to take his paycheck and keep driving. So who are you going to go and put in the Red Bull seat? Remember, Marco doesn't like Danny Rick, but Christian Horner does like Danny Rick, but Marco's left, so Marco has nothing to say anymore, which means Danny Rick needs to come up to the Red Bull seat, which means Liam finally gets a permanent seat in F1 because he can drive in the AlphaTauri Visa Cashback RB and be next to Yuki, but Yuki's still going to show him up, but it'll be a bit closer. This leads that silly season has reached new insane heights. But this also leads to a challenge, because the Mercedes team said that they wanted to have Kimi Antonelli in the seat, but now they put Max in the seat, but they can't get rid of George because they like George because he's the chosen boy, which means that the other deal that Mercedes have done, which is taking and talking to Williams and putting Kimi in the Williams for another year to see if he can be any good. But what are they going to do? Because Max is going to be amazing in Mercedes, because clearly he's the best driver in the world. And what are we going to do? I don't know. But at the end of the day, it turns out that this means that Lewis gets the title this season, because the Mercedes is so bad that not even Max Verstappen can save it. And then Lewis can retire at the end of 2024, and we can go back to some normal sanity. Does that make sense?
No, that was totally bonkers.
Okay, great. Of course, this doesn't really happen because Marco apparently has not been suspended, and he had a meeting with the Red Bull management, Red Bull the drinks company, not Red Bull the team, and everybody's happy and we're going to keep it as is, so I'm disappointed. But I still think this could happen.
Yes, I have other driver theories, but we can move that on to later in the program.
Shall we talk about the actual thing that happened between races?
Sure.
So it turns out that Carlos Sainz wasn't feeling very well, and deciding that the best way to spice up the already spicy driver situation was for his appendix to go pop. And thankfully, he got through surgery and he's okay. But this leads to something happening. And what is that, Andrew?
He was more than okay. He was in the garage, helping coach Bergman or Behrman up. He was with he was with Ferrari. He was being the good team player guy.
That is the kind of healthcare that F1 can get you.
And the best hospital in Jeddah.
Yes.
Cool. So, I guess this is leading to the case of what will be the fallout from Carlos Sainz's appendix. As we all know that the reason Danny Rick is in the V-carb is because of Alex Albon's appendix. Yes. And all the chaos that led from that. The reason Liam Lawson is being talked about for Formula One seats is because of Alex Albon's appendix. It's fantastic. And so the question is, what will Carlos's appendix bring us? I know we kind of talk more about silly season stuff later, but did Ferrari hire the wrong Brit?
This is such a great question. On the surface, you could almost make a statement of yes, because I believe Oliver finished higher than Lewis, correct?
He did, yeah. Lewis was on the alternate strategy doing a bit of safety car hanging.
True.
To be fair.
He almost also out-qualified Lewis. Almost.
Well, the Mercedes was crap, so let's... Sure. But he was 11th. He didn't make it into Q3.
No, first time. But apparently it's because he had to abort a lap because he made a slight whoopsie. So, we'll give him begin a doubt. But this does...
Yeah, and also he didn't even have the full weekend. He had an FP3 session.
Yes, he had 1 hour.
Yeah.
So I think this is a great question, and I'm disappointed that, and I don't mean this because I don't like Carlos, I like Carlos, but I'm disappointed that we don't get to see him in more races, Mr. Behrman, to prove a point.
Well, to be fair, I think the best lineup for Ferrari might be going forward would be Carlos and Behrman.
Oh, no, there we go. Yes, I think the reality is that Carlos gives you the consistency, Behrman gives you the opportunity, Charles can't finish more than 1 lap at high speed, and Lewis appears to have checked out. So,
I have thoughts on Charles's race pace. We can talk about that later. And the F1 Academy had its start.
Yeah, it was the first race, and this lady called Dorian Pin, she qualified on pole twice, and then won both races. Apparently, after the second race, they forgot to tell her that the race was over, and she didn't see the checkered flag, and so she won, and she was going full tilt on the next lap, leading to the point that there was an investigation about whether she needed to be penalised for going too fast after finishing the race, which I didn't realise was a thing.
It kind of makes sense as a thing, because usually that's when all the marshals are out waving their flags, being like, yeah, you did it, hooray, but yeah.
So if you do want to go watch those, I believe they are on YouTube for anybody to watch, and so I think that's worth a look.
ESPN, I think, is broadcasting them in the States as well.
Okay, awesome. I think it is worth watching these, A, because I think it helps the whole thing get some time, but B, it can also be some interesting racing, because Abby Pulling, who did pretty good in W Series, and I think was in F1 Academy last year, I think she was second both times also, and I think she's got a lot of potential. So it's interesting. I'm excited because I want that to be exciting racing. I want it to be interesting racing, because I think that's how they get the money to let them put a lady in F1, and that would be amazing.
And in F2 Worlds, Antonelli was 6th in the feature race. So
that's not bad.
He's moving up.
Yeah, his second race, and he had that bad F2 test because it was raining. So we'll see. We'll see.
He was only 1 spot ahead of where Behrman finished in the F1 race.
Interesting. I think that says that Kimi Antonelli is clearly the best driver, because you can compare F2 and F1 like that.
Well, I was more going from the fact of he could only manage 1 better position than the guy who got thrust into F1 with 1 hour of practice did in the grandest of the races. Yeah. It's not looking good for Kimi Antonelli to be the second coming of the best driver ever. No. I mean, with a name like Kimi, you just hope, but there is only one Kimi.
Indeed, there is only one Kimi. I miss Kimi sometimes.
Shall we move on to our favorite segment?
Our favorite segment. Does blank still have a job? And it is very occasional because we've not done it once. So it is occasional. Infrequent. No, that's not right.
Oh, well. Very frequent.
Yeah, we should call it the very frequent, occasionally infrequent segment.
Yeah.
Does blank still have a job? Anyway, number 1. Does Lewis still have a job?
Lewis does still have a job. Lewis was looking better than he was last week. He's not happy with the strategy, but I get where he's coming from on this. And I think he did a great job keeping that medium tire alive for as long as he did. And I think Lewis drove great this weekend. If there was another late safety car, he's ahead of George and looks great. And he's not upset about the strategy. And I don't think safety car goal hanging around Jeddah is a bad idea.
No. Statistics say that there has been one every time. I think the only reason I put him in this list, and I'm unwilling to accept that George is better than Lewis, but so far, every time the car is crap, which is the last 2.5 years, George does better. And I think that makes me just pause.
See, George got his start in a Williams. He knows how to drive a crap car. George is better at driving a crap car. Lewis can't drive a crap car because he wants to drive a good car. If you had them both in a good car, Lewis would be better because Lewis is better at driving better cars.
I agree, but to put it in a slightly less spicy way, I think Lewis is a point in his career where if he knows that there's not something meaningful on the table, why are you going to pour your heart and soul into it? On the other hand, George still has something to prove.
Yeah, and we said the same thing about Fernando last weekend, and you looked at the end of his race, and like he was like, I'm doing quali laps for the last 9 laps to keep everybody behind. Like Fernando was like, I can finish ahead of the Mercedes. I'm going to do this. He was trying today. He was not trying at the end of last week. So yeah,
maybe it's exciting. It's a more interesting track because Bahrain's just boring.
Oh, I disagree. Bahrain's a great track. It's been ruined by testing. Anyway.
Sure. So, Stroll. Does Stroll still have a job?
He has as much job security as he ever had in the sense of he's not a great Formula One driver, but his dad owns the team.
I know we keep talking about him, but like, it's just... To be fair, I will give him credit.
He was second in Q1.
Randomly. Like,
yeah.
Pastor Maldonado. That's who Stroll is.
Didn't Pastor win a race?
Yeah, only because he qualified at the front one time completely at random. Like that's what's going to happen with Stroll. At some point, he's going to somehow pull it off, qualify in the front, and manage to win.
Wasn't he on pole at Turkey in 2020?
Yeah, yes, but if that had been a normal track, I think it would have been okay. But it wasn't a normal track. It was an ice rink, so weird things happened.
Don't you need a non-normal track for Stroll's?
That's not what happened in Barcelona when Pastor Maldonado qualified on pole and won.
Yeah, but that was when we were doing all the testing in Barcelona, and it's like, okay, cool, we know exactly what we're doing. Yeah, you need a... But see, this is why I think we say Stroll would be really good at WEC, because like there is enough randomness in like a 24-hour race that like that plays into Stroll's hands.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. He's fine. He clipped the wall twice and sent it in on a race, and yeah, like
he was trying really hard, and I think he just tried too hard and went a bit too close.
Yeah, but I think that's always what's going on with Lance. I think he's always trying too hard, and he tries too hard into a wall.
Yeah. Do you think his dad says afterwards and the team says afterwards that the wall jumped into him?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Does Perez still have a job?
I think he does. I think he's looking a lot. I think he realized that, you know, his best chance to do a Nico Rosberg is to make himself invaluable in that Red Bull seat. And, you know, not necessarily challenge Max. Well, maybe he can't challenge Max as well, but like, you know, just he's qualifying is a lot better this year. Like, you know, it's one thing to not be in Q3. It's another thing to be in third, because at least now they can play the team games, things like that. If you're splitting Ferraris, like that's fine.
And when the car is good and you qualify in third, you can make up for it. As he demonstrated last year, the car was good and he could make up for it. But when you're in P15 and you have to make up, you know, 12, 13 places, it's not working. When you have to make up one, sure.
Yeah. No, I think Perez is doing great. If anything, that leads to the next session of like, does Danny Rick still have a job?
No.
Yeah, I mean, Danny Rick is probably what helped me get into Formula One, and it's sad to see him in this state, but man, he is... I think that those last year in the Red Bull, 2018, mm-hmm. I think that's what really broke Danny Rick.
Okay, interesting.
Because if you remember that year, like he had a lot of really bad luck, mm-hmm. like with car reliability and things like that. That was one of the last years on the Renault engine. Like just really bad luck, didn't go well for him. And then immediately, like, this is also Max starts to become the Max we know of, like, a little bit more level-headed, a little bit quicker. So even if he did get the car to the finish line, he was being that wonderful second Australian driver for Red Bull, the Mark Webber role. And, like, yeah, I think that's what broke him.
So, but what happened between his Renault and his McLaren years? Because when he was in the Renault, he was like fighting for podiums. The car had come forward. He was showing great against Ocon and the Hulk. Like I felt like he was performing appropriately in that car.
Yes, he should be beating Esteban Ocon and and Nico Hülkenberg.
Is that an implicit transitive statement that Yuki is better than maybe he sometimes looks?
I think Yuki is actually a really good F1 driver. Like, I think, like, Yuki really hasn't put a foot wrong in that Toro Rosso. Like, he's gotten the better of pretty much everybody that's been his teammate from time to time, like all the races. And you could make the argument he's qualifying that car further up the grid than it belongs, at least based on how his teammates are driving it. Like,
yeah, I can subscribe to the theory is Danny isn't as good as he used to be, but Yuki is better than people give him credit for.
Right, which is why if anybody I think is going to replace Perez, I think it's going to be Yuki.
Yeah, I don't think Perez is in danger as long as he keeps this performance, because that's the thing that Red Bull need in that seat, and it's the reason Bottas was so good in the Mercedes second seat, is they need someone who maybe not accepts, but understands that they won't beat the other person. And it's not worth trying because it hurts you more and it hurts the team more.
Yeah, I think honestly, like the three people for... Is it three? Yeah, three people for the Red Bull seat. It's 3 or 4. Four. Hang on. Go with me on this. I went with you on your crazy thing. So Perez stays in the seat.
Yeah.
That's an easy option. Danny Rick, because everybody loves Danny Rick, but I don't think that's a good long-term solution. Yuki, because Yuki's performed well in the Red Bull and is a Red Bull driver, but I think him going to Aston with the Honda deal also makes sense. Mm-hmm. Or Alex Albon.
I think Alex has had such a good time at Williams with the team that he understands what he needs from a team, and that is not Red Bull. He knows that Red Bull will not give him what he needs to be supported, which is basically an actual nurturing environment. And I don't mean that in a wishy-washy sense, like Red Bull, crushes people, but I think the Williams ethos, the James Vowles ethos is like, we're going to push you hard, but we're here to make it happen. And I feel like Red Bull is like, you looked funny for one lap, out.
Yes, but there's something else going on here, and that is the internal struggle going on at Red Bull corporate. Because if you know Red Bull stuff, essentially Red Bull isn't really anything special. It's a Taiwanese, not Taiwanese, a Thailand drink, a Thai drink, that Dietrich bought the rights to and made the marketing company and sold it all. And he was able to control Red Bull up into his death. After he died, the Thais now own 51% of Red Bull, and Alex Albon is the only Thai driver on the grid. If Christian Horner wants to keep his role at Red Bull Racing, what if you put the Thai driver in the second seat?
I don't think Alex will go back while Marco is there, which then to make your scenario requires you to involve my earliest scenario, which I can subscribe to.
Oh, then Helmut leaves, Max leaves, Alex takes Max's seat.
Yeah.
There we go.
So who gets the second seat?
We just leave Perez in. And Perez finally has a shot at the World Championship.
Until
Alex does Alex Albon things.
I subscribe to this. Yes.
Now we've gone full silly season.
Got it. All the pieces have fallen into place. Yes. 100%. And it all has logic and reason behind it. It's absolutely perfect. Brilliant. Amazing.
The chances of it happening are near zero. I am not putting it on our predictions list.
They are. It is more than 5%.
I think
less than 20. Less than 20, more than 5.
So, moving on to quali. It was quali. I wouldn't say there's anything special going on. Kind of people were about where we thought they were.
Yeah. It happened.
Yeah. It does. I think there was some tire... There was a little bit of tire drama. I guess not even drama, just like people not having all the soft tires they wanted for their races. It was fine.
Merck trying to make it through on the mediums, which I thought was a reasonable plan, but only works when your car is not crap.
Yeah, it also only works when there's a Q2 tire rule. That's also the only good time to go through on mediums.
True.
Otherwise, why would you race a perfectly good race tire? Yeah, it was fine. Yeah, Max got the job done. He was quick.
Should we talk about the race?
Yeah, let's talk about the race.
Okay, before the race started, though, it should be noted. It should be noted that Max stayed up until 4 a.m. iRacing. And the question I have about this is not so much the 4 a.m. time zones and whatever. Did he bring a sim rig with him? And how does he get low latency enough in the hotel for it to be successful? That's my question.
I mean, I have to imagine it's, one of the things that goes on the containers that get shipped to the flyaway races is Max Verstappen's racing sim.
True. I did hear it was on a plane at one point, so I wonder if he pops to the airport, sleeps on the plane, saves some hotel fees. I don't know.
Fire up the APU and just burn some jet fuel to power the sim rig.
Indeed. But nonetheless, I thought it was interesting and surprising. But he did quite well. So credit to the guy for being able to stay up till 4 a.m. and get on with it. So.
Should we have one topic on this podcast one day be, does Max need a hobby?
Yes. He does have 2 Bengal cats, which is almost a hobby in and of itself. Actual racing.
It was fine.
Yeah.
I think it was better than Bahrain.
Yeah, I like the track. I'm not sure I like where the track is, and I'm not a fan of street tracks because of the walls and crashes and stuff, but it's actually a good track.
You only have so many more years of this before we're on to Saudi Arabia's Rainbow Road.
I know. I'm not sure. I refuse to accept that they can build that track.
I'm not sure how you can have a grade 1 track that has, like, an overpass. Or, like...
If your brakes fail at the top of that hill doing 170 miles an hour, you are literally going to be the canonical projectile 45-degree arc. Like, no. No.
Well, no, because we keep getting told that F1 cars have enough downforce that they could drive upside down. So you'd stay stuck to the ground. You'd then just go into the barrier, and then your car would flip over, and then you'd fall 3 stories.
True, or if you did go through the barrier, you would, because you were still going fast and accelerating due to the wonders of gravity, you would hit the ground faster and go straight down.
Well, I would hope the wall would slow you down a little bit, but yeah, then you are re-accelerating.
Exactly. So anyway, good track. I think it was an entertaining race. What was up with K-Mag?
He was at the same point in time the best teammate for Hulkenberg to kind of slow everybody up to build the gap so that Haas has points. They are in the points, but also 20 seconds of penalties. Granted, I know it's like that's only 2 penalties now as opposed to like 4 in previous years, but it's still not a good look.
It isn't a good look. I will say that I like the fact that the stewards were quick. They were pretty quick to decide those. They were pretty, what's the word? They were, I don't know whether they were clear-cut cases, but they made it feel like a clear-cut decision. And then the new policy, if they want to, for causing a collision, you get 10 seconds, not 5 seconds, I actually think is a good thing. And I wonder what difference it would have had in like 2021.
Same with cutting the track and gaining an advantage.
Yes. Quick, fast, get that back. Piastri, who nearly did it twice, he clearly has it in his head. He believes strongly in giving the place back. So boom, credit to Piastri for that.
I mean, I think as well as Oscar did fighting Hamilton, I think he would have needed a lot to catch Charles, as Charles went backwards, as Charles does. So I think, it was one of those, you were always going to get ahead of Lewis when Lewis stops. So do you want a 10-second penalty hanging over your head where if something goes crazy and there's another late safety car, you're down 8 places? I think that was good racing on Oscar's part. And also, Oscar had a really good weekend. He beat Lando in qualifying. He beat Lando in the race. Oscar was looking good.
Did he beat Lando in the race?
Yeah.
No, I think you're wrong there.
Piastri was 4th. Norris was 8th.
What
race did you watch? Did you watch Saudi Arabia 2024?
I forgot about Lewis's pit stop.
There you go.
It's all good now.
Yeah, and also Lando's pit stop.
Yeah, Lando pit stop. I got very confused. So yeah, there we go. Sorry. Whoop. It's called old age. Anyway, yes, K-Mag making mistakes. He kept smashing people into walls, which he really shouldn't be doing, and doing it. Not good. So, second item on our list of race recap is the McLaren was speedy until it opened its DRS, and then it was kind of like throwing an anchor out, relatively speaking.
Yeah, but it was so quick through those high-speed corners in Sector 1. Oh, that was so much fun to watch, like every lap after that pit stop with Lewis and Lewis and Lando. Oof, say that 3 times fast. Just because it was like Lewis was in DRS down the straight and it was close, and then like you got into Sector 1 and it's like, what DRS? That toe is that is gone.
We've always got the question: was it the car behind that was being slow or the car in front that was being fast? And I think in this case it was clearly the car in front was going fast.
I think it's a little bit of both, because I think if the Mercedes is not that great of a race car, which I don't think it is, it's not going to follow close. Granted, with the new regs and the ground effect cars, like, you're not as disrupted by the car in front, but going through the high speed corners, I think it unsettled the Merc more. And I think, the McLaren went faster for sure, but I think it also slowed Lewis down a little bit.
Yeah. I'll concede that, especially as you saw Russell couldn't catch up with anybody else in front either.
Yeah. But that could just be George's driving style.
True. Eating those tires. Nom, 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 nom. He is the cookie monster, and by cookie monster, I mean tire monster, because he likes to eat those tires. Anyway, okay, next item. Hamilton and Lando safety car hanging?
I mean, they were, and around Jeddah, I don't blame them. You know, it's a track that has a lot of safety cars and red flags. Like, split the strategies between the teams, because, like, for both Mercedes and McLaren, like, you want to challenge Max. Safety car goal hanging is not a bad shout. I think
it worked out. It was either net positive or net neutral. I don't think it harmed them in this race.
Yeah. I think it was probably negative, to be honest, because I think they both qualified higher than where they finished.
Sure, but I don't think that if they had changed the tires, it would have changed that relative result. Maybe for Lando, but I don't think for Lewis. I think it was net positive for Lewis.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there was probably also, not only were they safety car hanging, but we've seen recently where they're, especially in a track like Jeddah, where it's originally a safety car, you put under the safety car, and then it becomes a red flag. Yeah. And then you get the free tire change under the red flag situation. So I don't blame them. I think it's a fine strategy, splitting strategy, especially on the cars. I think it kind of sucks for some of those drivers where they're like, but I want to be doing the good race. Not the hopeful race.
I want to be driving quickly.
But they both did a good job stretching the tires for as long as they did, and yeah.
Yep.
Surprised that Lando didn't close in to Behrman as much as we thought he might, because it was striking distance 4 laps at one point in time, and he never even got to striking distance. So
I wonder if because it was used softs at the end, he needed to nurse them more, and that hurt him more than. Or he tried to nurse them thinking they wouldn't last as long, but he could have given them a bit more of a push.
I think there was also some extent of, I don't think Deg was as bad as people thought it was going to be, and the hards didn't really fall off to that extent. Now, if we want a little bit of spice, should we just close the safety car or the pits during the safety car?
You know, I'm really curious about this, because we used to do that.
Yeah. I think IndyCar still does that.
Yes, and I think when F1 did it, they had the weird problem that they really, really closed it, which meant that if you were really smart and you knew there was going to be a safety car but they hadn't called it, it wasn't worth it because you get stuck at the end of the pits waiting for the light to go green.
I think they also had a problem with, like, refueling. Granted, IndyCar also has that problem of, you know, if you were one lap on fuel and then the safety car pit was going to be closed for a while, like... But at the same point in time, I think if we rewind and re-listen to our Jeddah podcast from last year, which I'm not going to do, but I know it was at least one of our podcasts last year that we talked about, where if you have a safety car right at the optimum pit window, it kind of ruins the race.
Yes.
Because everybody pits, and then, oh, cool, we've all gone onto the new tires at the same time. There's no tire deltas between the cars. They're all on the same stuff. They're all what they should be. So I think there's a good argument to be made, especially in the non-refueling era, of closing the pits during a safety car. I think it would make things a little more interesting.
I think it would, and there's a little part of me that, and you know, I've said this before, that I don't like intentionally putting your thumb on the scales of the race, but I almost wonder if there's a random part of this, or a lottery aspect, which is that sometimes it stays open, sometimes it closes, right? Or there's something like that to change what the impact of closing it in that case was. Because in some respects, while I think you're right that the various safety cars at the right times neutralizes the race, I feel closing it also kind of neutralizes anything else. It's kind of weird because it just means everybody keeps doing what they were going to do anyway.
Yeah, I think you could make the argument of safety is a good reason to close the pits, because you have a lot more cars in the pit lane during that sort of situation. And, you know, I think every time we have one of these situations, you see, in this case, it was Perez get a penalty for impeding or unsafe release. And it's only going to be a matter of time before two cars come together with every pit crew out in the pit lane. And then that's not going to be a good look.
Yeah. And then we'll change it, we'll close it, and we'll do that for 5 years, and then we'll decide we want to change our minds again and put it back the other way.
Right. But I think it is putting your thumb on the finger to some or your thumb on the scale to some extent. But, you know, I think it's fine just in the sense of if we're also thinking about ways to nuke Max Verstappen, of like, oh, his gap is suddenly gone with used tires, and now he's like fight through a field or something, and, you know, he can't just build to a gap. Like, hey, that's not a bad way to nuke Verstappen a little bit.
The pit lane is closed for everybody except the person in first position.
Do.
Because everybody else will stop, and then you'll get a massive lead because you'll be all the way out, and then it'll reopen. It'll be okay.
But see, then we're going to end up in a situation where somebody knows that, like, you can't overtake under the safety car unless they're off the track. So Max is going to intentionally run really wide into, like, the last corner, let Perez go through. Perez is now leading and can't pit, and then pit.
Yeah. No, there you go. You see, that's the problem with F1 when everybody tries to play it like a total weird thing. Okay, next item.
Hey, at least there's consistent rules.
True.
Yeah.
There are consistent rules. So I had a late-breaking item here, but... Oliver Behrman on the radio, tell me where Lewis is, tell me where whoever else it was, and then Ferrari's it by saying, just drive a good race, there's good opportunity here. And I'm like, that's not the question he asked. I understand why they would like to convey that, but like, it's like a Ferrari thing. I'm going to ask a question, what is 1 + 1? And Ferrari would come back and say, well, when you combine two numbers, it goes higher and it gives you an opportunity to reach that. And it's like, that doesn't help me. I'm trying to ask you what 1 + 1 is.
See, I think that's even too much information from a Ferrari engineer, because you've included information that it's higher.
True. Fair point. I will concede that. But I was disappointed in the radio, and it makes me feel like I'm sorry for Lewis next year. It's going to be terrible.
Not to mention, if they asked 1 + 1, we'd get a standby, we are checking.
We didn't hear that this race.
Well, that's because we didn't get any Javi radio.
True.
Yeah.
True. Which means Leclerc must have had a happy race.
But we did maybe get the new best radio engineering transmission of all time, which is, can you drive the car back? No, I'm in the wall.
But the best bit about that, right, isn't that, because I could see, like, if you take that in isolation, what you just said, maybe they hadn't seen it on camera yet. But the first question they asked was, are you okay? Clearly knowing he'd had a significant shunt. And then immediately say, can you bring it back? It was classic. That engineer has a big career ahead of them at Ferrari.
Yeah. No, Lance has put it into a wall. Of course he can't bring it back. Like, Lance is now stationary on the track. Most likely he has hit a wall. Like, he can probably not bring it back.
Statistically speaking, this is quite likely for Mr. Stroll. It is. Did you hear the voice of Lance and the intonation? He was like, you have to be bleeping me. Yeah. It was brilliant.
You know I'm in a wall, right?
Exactly. Last item on our race recap.
So that Max guy's pretty good, huh?
Yeah, he's pretty good. He was so far ahead by the end of halfway through the first lap that it was just hilarious. It was great watching everybody else behind have the race, and Max was like...
Yeah, do you think Max knows that, like, the DRS is now active after one lap?
No, he just has no idea. He doesn't even know where the DRS button is because he doesn't get to use it.
Like, it's using qualifying. But yeah, no, during a race, like, you could just put tape over that button and he'd never know.
Exactly. So,
do you think the RB20 should start using, like, Apple CarPlay or something so Max can listen to some tunes during the race and, vibe along for a little bit? Yeah.
I 100% think that you're allowed to have your music in your car, and they should be high quality because they've got in-ear things. It should be great.
Speaking of ways to nuke Max Verstappen and make things more interesting, the person who qualifies last gets to pick the song Max has to listen to for the full race on repeat.
I like it.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
See if we can drive Max crazy.
And why will they pick Super Max every week?
No, that could just encourage him.
Maybe. I don't know how he feels about EDM. Maybe he's more of a jazz guy.
Yeah, I don't know. I just gotta think. Think of something that would just might drive you crazy after time. Like, what does the fox say?
I love that song. It is the best song ever. It is truly fantastic. I am not even being ironic. I love that song. It is brilliant.
What about Eurovision's least greatest hits?
Oh, there we go.
You have to listen to the runner-up from Eurovision.
Oh, God. I hate Eurovision. I hate watching it. I hate the songs that come out of it, except the Estonian/Finnish ones, which are brilliant. It's terrible.
How dare you disrespect ABBA like that? They are a Swedish national treasure.
They are. I didn't say I didn't like the performers outside of Eurovision, but I hate Eurovision.
That is probably the third best museum in Stockholm.
The ABBA Museum?
Yeah.
Did they have the ABBA sponsored F1 car there?
I don't know. I didn't go.
Oh. How do you know it's the third best? Did you just read a listicle?
Because it would be the third one I would have gone to in Stockholm after the other two that I went that were really good.
I see.
The Boss Museum is clearly the best museum in Stockholm, and if you're ever in Sweden, you should check it out because it's awesome.
Great. Shall we move on past the race?
Yeah, I think it's the K-Mag. Both the Williams were nuked by one being Logan and the other being hit by K-Mag.
Yeah.
The Saubas have a problem with their wheel nuts, it looks like, which would be
They have a problem with their car.
Yeah, but they also have a problem with their wheel nuts, which is more disappointing.
That was the other big news. We should have put this back at the beginning. Audi accelerated their full 100% purchase of Sauber. It was supposed to complete at the end of next year, but now it's completed at the end of this year, which I think is the fact that they saw that the cars for the second year running are awful and there's going to be a bunch of firings.
Do they keep Valtteri around?
I don't think they do. I think they decide to go for some kind of all-new or all-German or go for like the super best driver. I'm not sure they're going to keep Bottas.
Well, Carlos is clearly the best one they could pick up.
Yes, and they've got family connections there.
Yes, the Spanish and the Germans, a classic connection.
Well, more like they love his dad, so his dad will be like, all right, if you do this, if you take Carlos, I'll do that car for another year and then win it for you.
Oh, does Carlos race for Audi in Rally?
He does. He races one of the Audi e-tron thingy-me-what's-its.
Nice.
Which is electrically driven powertrain, but it has an onboard generator because it's a really long way and it's dusty.
Oh, back on Max real quick. We should just mention, just as like Max side quest statistical awesomeness, this is now 41 races in a row where he has led the championship, and he is 19 of the last 20 in terms of wins.
This is unacceptable, and I love Max in his skills. But
if Max wins in Australia in 2 weeks, he will equal the longest F1 win streak that he set last season at 10. And the amount of races between the streaks is 1. He didn't win Singapore, and that's it.
Okay. Anyway, spicy takes and rumors, the purpose of our podcast.
I feel like we've been sprinkling those in throughout this week.
We have. It's been quite a spicy takey podcast. We'll do this one. I think this could have gone longer, but I think actually it's not that long because I don't think you're going to disagree very much with me. Lewis has had many rivalries throughout his career. Sometimes, most of the time, in fact, we blame them on the other driver. It was Fernando, it was Nico, it was Seb, it was Max. But Lewis is the only constant. Ipso facto, Lewis is the problem, and not the other drivers, who are obviously perfect in every possible way. Yeah,
but Lewis has also done a lot to bring the teams he's with up.
He is such a nice guy. He is
and very fashionable.
He's very fashionable. He has amazing outfits, and he wears them with confidence. He's clearly hanging out with John Elkann, who also seems to have some sort of maybe slightly more preppy fashion stuff. But he was at the F1 Academy race. He came down to see the race. He watched the race and hung out with the drivers. Nobody else did that, right?
Well,
other people
Lewis.
were like, "Look,
he's going to
exactly."
do it.
And he's just, and there's the story that's been doing it around second time this week, where last year I think it was when everybody was going to Saudi Arabia. Some journalist was like, I'm not really sure about the fact that this race in Saudi Arabia, because I feel very uncomfortable because apparently we're not allowed to go into these places and we're not allowed to do this because we're women. And apparently the claim from this journalist is Lewis went and talked with a bunch of people and fixed all the rules so that they could in fact go somewhere. And that's why Lewis is great. And that's why everybody has a rival with him, because they know not only is he good on the road, he's a really nice bloke.
We mentioned last week, is Lewis worth the $40 million? Yes.
For
things like this. Yes.
I
guess another spicy take rumor is it about time Max cuts out Jos like Lewis cut out Anthony?
Yes, it's his time.
Yeah, Jos just seems to be causing I honestly think Jos Verstappen is the biggest possible detriment to Max Verstappen's racing career.
I agree. And here's the thing. You've got to look at the story arc that went through for Lewis, which I think he had a much better relationship with Anthony in the first place. But they had to take the time apart.
Anthony never left him at a gas station.
That we know of.
True.
But they went through an arc and they came back together and they learned they overcome the challenges that had caused them for their relationship to break down. I feel Max and Jos need this story arc to rebuild them as better people.
Sounds great.
Great. Predictions for the Australia.
I am hoping this one is a jinx, but I'm going to say it anyway. Is Ricardo disappoints?
Yeah, I don't think that's that spicy. I think it's going to be true, and not because it's the jinx. I think it's because he can't drive. The real jinx
Well, he's never been good at around Australia.
Is that you've said this, and now Yuki's going to have a problem.
Oh, there you go.
Next one you have on the list?
Max equals 10 wins. It's boring, I know, I'm sorry, but it is kind of cool for him to go 20 out of 21.
Yeah, there is this little part as I was thinking as he made the stat and rolled over the finish line today. It sucks, not because the stat and the dominance per se in and of itself. It's because the chances of other people equaling it and the conflation of all the scenarios that have caused to end up with a brilliant car and a brilliant driver. And I think it's just going to be unlikely to happen for a while. And so you're going to have this stat and it's going to hang out for 20 years. And that in some respects is more boring than the stat in and of itself.
I would say at least these stats are taking place in a season where we have like 24 races. If this happened in a season where you had like 13 races, it's like, oh man, is this better or worse? Like,
yeah, that's why I think we need as a sport, we need to look more at percentages now. Yeah. So, my spicy take is Max does not take part in the Australian Grand Prix.
Because he got like COVID or his appendix burst? Like what?
Because stage 6 of Hornergate will happen when Marco will actually leave and Max will nope out so quick to prove a point, and it will happen at just the wrong time and there'll be negotiations with contracts that cause at least one race to be missed this year while he gets signed with Mercedes, per my previous
so you're really going in on this.
Yeah, I'm really going in. This is my prediction. Max will not take part because he will not have signed for Mercedes at that point, but he will be out of Red Bull.
I mean, I think a more likely scenario is somebody else's appendix bursts on the field. Is Formula One driving bad for your appendix?
It is in 2020, since the 2022 regs, because it bounces more, causing more bruising, which causes your appendix to be more aggravated, coupled with low energy, trouble with sleeping, and all the stuff because of all the long seasons. It's the bouncy and it's the seasons. It's exactly, that's what's the appendix is the risky part. All drivers should have them taken out before they race.
As a quick note, neither Dominic nor myself are medical professionals. Please do not take any medical advice from this podcast. Thanks.
The other spicy take related exactly to that one, and I know we're trying not to talk about Hornergate, but I think stage 6 of Hornergate will happen. And to recap, stage 5, which is where we currently are, which is where everything seems to have been wrapped up. Few people look like they might get fired, but not the real person, because there's a massive power struggle inside the politics, but it's kind of quieting out now, which is because Marco's kissed and made up with Red Bull and it's all going to be okay. We've reached the end of stage 5. Stage 6 is where it all gets blown back open again with shocking new revelations.
Not to just keep bouncing back around on all this. Mm-hmm. If Helmut Marko goes to Mercedes, the thing with Helmut right now is he is an employee of Red Bull, not Red Bull Racing, and does not count against the cost cap. Will he count against the Mercedes cost cap, or will he be like some employee of like, oh, this thing over here, and we just hang out in the grid all the time?
He'll be employed by Daimler, not by Mercedes AMG Petronas F1.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah. But you know, it'll be okay.
Because he's an energy drinks guy, not a car guy.
Well, he's going to have to learn how to deal with that. And what about Adrian Newey? Because Adrian Newey's going to go to Ferrari, and James Allison's going to be sitting there saying, I could have gone to Ferrari and it would have been great. I could have had better food. I could have had the enjoyable Italian passion. And he's just going to be stuck in Oxford. Who wants to be stuck in Oxford? Anyway.
I'm sure somebody does.
Yes, probably. Especially if you've got a, tuition thing at Oxford University. That'll look great. English, maybe one of the maths, politics. Anyway.
What's his name? Latifi. He might be at Oxford, maybe going to biz school.
He went to London School of Economics.
Is that better than Oxford?
I think for economics it is. I mean, the whole school is called London School of Economics. So to do your MBA in economics, it seems like going to a place called Economics Place. Seems like a good idea.
Does that mean if I want to study good mine construction, I should go to the Colorado School of Mines?
Yes, or you could go to the Exeter School of Mines, which they also have one. There's another one somewhere else in England that's also called the School of Mines.
Interesting. Fascinating. All right. Got anything else you want to talk about?
Nope. We are, as always, at every moment of every day, waiting passionately on tenterhooks for your feedback. Remember to write into feedback@tinfoilhelmets.com and let us know your conspiracies, your feedback, and your wants. And tell your friends to like, listen, rate, and subscribe to the greatest F1 podcast recorded immediately after the race over FaceTime in North America.
Are we sure that's us?
I tried to qualify that. I think we're pretty close because everybody else
on
just
the West
uses
Coast
Zoom.
in the greater Seattle area.
There we go.
All right. Bye.
Peace.